I first learned of the CDPs when my family moved to Dayton, Kentucky, when I was in the 7th grade. And frankly, I was not too impressed with my 7th or 8th grade teacher. However, after 8th grade, I went to the academy. But in December, I had to quit school because my mother was having twins and she was not well. Well, she had already had like 8 children, I guess. I was working, doing all the things that a mother kind of does at home. So at one point, I said to myself, life has to be more than this. I thought about being a sister, a religious. And I remember saying to my mother, when I was a kid, and I said to my mother, who do you think is higher in heaven, a sister or a mother? And she immediately said, a mother. And from my experience at that point, I thought, you're probably right. But driving up the lane to St. Anne's that first time, I felt overwhelmed in some respects. But I was willing to give it a chance. After I was professed, I went to Christ the King in Lexington and was there for 14 years. So in some respects, I think I kind of grew up in Lexington. So it was memorable in that it was my first assignment. After that, I went to Pikeville, Kentucky, and was principal and taught 4 grades, which was another kind of overwhelming experience to start with. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I did it. So they were challenges in a way, but they all helped me to grow. And then I became provincial, and as provincial, that was a wonderful experience in that I really got to know the sisters individually, personally, and that meant very much to me. So I guess in a way that was probably the most positive memory. Then I went to Catholic Charities, Catholic Social Services, which was another wonderful experience because it was totally different from anything that I had ever done as far as social work. I had not done any social work. I was a teacher, I was an administrator. But just to be involved with all of those folks who were social workers and the good work that they did in ministering to people who were really needy in all kinds of different ways. And to feel that even though I was the administrator, I wasn't directly involved with those folks, just to be a part of that ministry was a really wonderful experience. I would say that it is a wonderful life. It's a life that has its challenges. It's not all peaches and cream, but it's not all the other either. It's certainly a wonderful way to grow closer to Jesus.
I first learned about them when I was in grade school because they were the teachers there. I became very fond of them. There was something about their life that attracted me. When I was in junior high, I had an opportunity to go to St. Anne's with a friend of mine. Her sister was a postulant. And that experience was so fantastic. These postulants were like in heaven. They were so happy and so peaceful. And I thought, oh, this is really wonderful. And then I found out that I was able to enter after the 8th grade. So that kind of clinched it for me. That's what I decided I was hoping to enter. I was a little concerned about being with a group of people I did not know because we were a very closed family and I really wasn't out and about that much. And so I thought, will I get along with other people that I don't know? That and the fact that I was leaving home. I was concerned about missing my family. Well, the year after I entered, my sister Ruth entered. And because she was kind of a tomboy, my mom and dad weren't too sure, but she was called by God. And then the couple years after that, my brother entered the Society of Divine Word foreign missionary priest. And then about a year or so after that, Juanita entered St. Anne's. So we are three of us here, and he is a priest. I have good memories about every place I've been. My most memorable place is Ashland, Kentucky, Holy Family School in Ashland, Kentucky. I went there. I was there for 18 years. And the people there, they were just wonderful people. And I enjoyed my teaching career. I had the second grade those whole 18 years. And I prepared them for First Communion, and that was a joy every year. I felt very privileged to be able to do that. I would encourage them if I thought, this was really a call from God. But I think now in my life, I would also make sure that they would know that there were some difficulties that are unique to the religious life, but that we do believe that God is there guiding us through all of those difficulties. But there is also a joy and a peace that goes along with being a religious and being involved with other religious.
I learned about the CDPs at St. Walburg Convent when I was living there. And then I had a sharing with the sisters. They told me about the CDP community. And I knew at that time I was called to move on and search. I came to visit, and as soon as I met the sisters and walked into the building, I knew this was where the Lord was leading me, because I really wanted to be a sister. I think my best place was with the daycare, when I worked with the small children, and where you can really watch them grow year by year. It was an enrichment for me, because I never knew that you could recognize that. But when you're with them long enough and you follow them from one class to the other, then you can see the difference in their maturity. Well, I ministered at St. Mary's Seminary, but we didn't have that much contact with the priests and boys. But I enjoyed the older sisters' stories and experiences. I would advise them to pray, to listen to the Lord and see what He's saying to them, and find a good mentor that can guide you along to make the right decision. I would tell myself the same thing my mentor would always tell me, to continue to try. And there were times when the religious life got hard and difficult. But there are times also that can be joyful and loving, and you can rejoice. Keep trying and keep searching until you find where the Lord wants you.
I was born in a CDP family. I had 5 aunts who were Sisters of Divine Providence. My mother had 3 sisters and my dad had 2. And then later on, my own sister joined the community, so there were 6. Our grandma, Wurzelbacher, lived with us. And when the sisters were allowed to come home for their home visit, 3 of her daughters, my aunts, came to our house to visit her, so I got to see these aunts oftener. My parents passed their faith on to my 6 siblings and me. They did it by example. We didn't always like it. We said the family rosary every night after supper. We went to Sunday Mass together. And during that, we went to the stations. So here I am, a Sister of Divine Providence for 60 years. Most of those years were in a classroom. How did it happen? Well, like Samuel, I had to answer God's call. I was walking to the bus stop one morning to go to work, and somewhere in my heart, I felt a tickle. I felt God saying there was more to life than what I was doing. The tickle in my heart occurred many times in my life. And finally, until I finally said, okay, I'll give it a try. I never really had any worries, but I did experience homesickness on occasion. I was given the opportunity after first profession to stay at the convent, the provincial house, and get my bachelor's degree at Willamette College, which is now Thomas More University. And then I started off into different missions. And through the years, I ministered in different schools, some large, some small, one in the inner city, middle class, and the rural areas. Some of the communities were large, like I said, and small. Some, in one community, there was even a nurse and sometimes administrators. My favorite place was Corpus Christi in Newport. I lived and worked there for 7 years. It was a small school, it had a small faculty, and a wonderful pastor, Father Nye. The parish was permeated with love and care for the students in the school as well as for the rest of the community. I can't say enough about Corpus. Children always touch my heart, especially the little ones. I had a first grade little girl tell me once, when I'm afraid, I pretend I'm holding God's hand. That just touched me. I went from working for a business to teaching little kids and loved every minute of it. I really enjoyed sharing our faith with them. I pray that they truly know that Jesus is their friend. And during this pandemic, that they realize that God does not wear a mask, has open hands, and is as close to us as a whisper. I would say, ask yourself, do you trust the Holy Spirit when you make decisions? Has anyone suggested to you the idea of a religious life? If you think you might be called to this life, don't be afraid. Investigate it. Check it out with somebody that you are comfortable with. I might add, a sense of humor is helpful. Pray each day asking God to help you hear His call and how you can answer it.
I first learned of the CDPs through a phone call. I have a very clear memory of my father, when we were still in Washington, of hanging up the phone and saying, "You're going to be taught by the Sisters of Divine Providence." So in those years, I stayed after school, I visited the sisters, I cleaned blackboards, emptied trash, clapped erasers, sat and chatted with them. And then I became a spy because we were right across the street from the front door of the school. The sisters didn't have a television, but the school did in the front office. And so every Sunday, I think every Catholic in the world watched Bishop Sheen. And the sisters would parade from the convent down the street, up the street to the front door of school, 2 by 2, wearing their mantles. And I watched out the window. And I watched them go back home. But the thing about the sisters was they were happy. And eventually that clicked. I wanted that happiness. I wanted to be with them. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be them. So here I am. When I think about these past years, I don't think too much about individual places as the ministries, because I'm in my 5th one. And for each one, I thought that's what I would be doing for the rest of my life. So I started out as a teacher, and I love teaching. I love having a unit of a class that we were one. This was my class. I was their teacher. When they asked me to be a principal, I said no. And I think I got by saying that 2 times. But the 3rd time there was a need, and God said, you gotta go. So I became a principal. And I loved it. I loved it because my world was so much broader. I learned the names of all the children in school. I met their parents, went to the Mothers Club meetings, and I just really enjoyed it. So those were the golden years. To prepare me for being principal at St. Francis Seraph in Over the Rhine in Cincinnati, deep inner city. Conflict, conflict, conflict. Conflict among the teachers, conflict with the pastor. But I learned that important lesson. Happiness comes from within. So, from that, and having experienced the different cultures there, I went to Ecuador. I became a foreign missionary. God said go, so I went. Then when I came back, God presented me with a position at Welcome House to work with women and children who were homeless or at risk of being homeless. So I did that for 9 years. And then the general chapter had said to do an action in support of the excluded in your society. And I thought I was already doing that because I thought, who can be more excluded than poor homeless people? Well, God said, no, there's another group, the immigrants. And so that led to the development of El Centro de la Divina Providencia. If I met someone who was discerning a call to religious life, I would advise them to be close to God, listen to God, trust God, but also to be close to some sisters, be close to happy sisters. The ideal would be just to volunteer. And I'm just going back to my own experience that is what moved me, being with them, doing work with them, and trust God.
My mother's sister was a CDP, so we came down to visit my aunt. And I can remember just being so enthralled with the hill in front of St. Anne Convent. And I would roll down, walk back up, roll down, walk back up, and it was such fun. So that was my introduction to CDPs. And then I had CDP teachers all through elementary school. And so I started to think at that point, I think I'd like to be like that. The only fear or maybe a bit of anxiety I had was it was so far away from home. And I knew I would not see my family for many, many months. And that was my only fear. And I did get homesick, but got through it, thanks to all the good people who were around me when I came. Before I made vows, I was, the second semester I spent in Clarksville, Maryland, filling in for a teacher who they thought would only be out for 2 weeks because she was sick, but she died. And so I ended up staying the whole semester. But the sisters there were only 3, the professed sisters in the community and myself, were so good to me and had such a supportive, encouraging attitude toward me. The one even came into my classroom every day after school and sat with me. We went over what had happened, and she gave me pointers and helped me plan my lessons for the next day. That was my real teacher training before I even started college. I was told by someone who had worked in the mountain area, you can tell if somebody's really from Appalachia when you meet people and they say, oh, I'm from Appalachia. And you say, oh, where are you going to be buried? And if they're truly Appalachian, they can tell you what mountain they're going to be buried on. Then I moved down to Columbia, South Carolina, And I looked for volunteer work. And something that just kind of came to me from a neighbor across the street was the women's shelter down in downtown Columbia. And so I called the woman who was in charge, and she said, I have been trying to find someone who could come and lead a Bible study on the courageous women in the Bible for our women who are here. I said, oh, I can do that. And so I did, but let me tell you, I got more out of that than those women did. Just to hear their stories. You know, most of them had come to the shelter because they had been in jail for one reason or another, or had at least been arrested, and the police would call Kathy and say, got another woman that I think you would be able to take at your shelter. These women could relate. I asked at one point, are there any particular women in the Bible that you're familiar with that you'd want to learn more about? They could really get into the stories, but they also really appreciated the stories in the New Testament where Jesus offered healing and forgiveness, and that was comforting to them. But the stories they told me were extremely powerful.
I would say give it a try, because it's probably going to be full of surprises and challenges, wonderful things, difficult things, and just things that you would never expect. And you will have a wonderful support group to help you through it all.
I have two great aunts who are CDPs, Sister Theophane and Sister Clementine Bensman. We went to St. Michael's School. They were all CDPs at that time. We had great women, great sisters. Well, there were other sisters in the area, but for me, it kind of came down to the precious blood or to a CDP. So I visited both of them, and we were here like a week. And so then it just came, this is something special. Am I really called to this? You just kind of keep asking that question. Well, it's kind of dangerous. It's a risky business. Each place I've gone to, it's new and different, and I needed to trust and, okay, God, you got to help us out here. I grew and learned something every place I was. In each place, it's like God would prepare me ahead of time, doing something, stretching me, but stretching the people where we were. You gotta listen all the time. Obedience, what is obedience but listening? And I gotta be quiet enough to listen, to really listen. I need to be silent, so the silence, I become the silence, because a lot of times I go, okay, God, I've never done that. Even at St. Camillus the second time, Vacation Bible School. Okay, yeah, but I haven't actually been part of that. But we need to listen. We listen to the people. We listen especially to God. And like that one painting, the movements of life. It's a cycle of change, risk, being able to do it, and see the new possibilities where God's kind of nudging, you know. I wasn't even looking for a pastoral associate place. And somebody in the administration said, here's an opening, consider it. And then I went back to the mountains, went to Manchester for 10 years. And then it opens up the whole thing of ecumenical stuff much more than other places I've been. And it's almost, you almost need to, because the Catholics in Clay County are less than 1/2 of 1%. You need to listen Look at the readings for Sunday, in which little part, phrase, sentence, or something speaks to you now.